In our last episode, we talked about Van Gogh spending 2 years in Paris with the leading artists, turning himself from a country painter from the Netherlands to the front edge of the avant-garde. Throughout Van Gogh's life, he had this almost Franciscan religious fervor of dismissing all material enjoyments, devoting himself fully in his pursuit. Largely due to that lifestyle, he failed in all of his marriage proposals. His replacement was frequent visits to local brothels. Besides syphilis, he was mentally screwed by the prostitutes repeatedly. That, with the absence of a wife to take care of him, his utter disregards of his own health, and the insane intensity of painting, made the lethal potion that would kill him in a little over 2 years. That is what I've said. Artists are necessarily weak creatures. If they do not put 120% of their energy into painting, they could not create anything worth anything. Taking care of themselves would most definitely getting in the way of their art, and they would not have the time and energy to be great artists. Back to our story, the burnout Van Gogh left Paris for Arles or Arles in early 1888. As we have said in episode 3, Theo, realizing that Gauguin was 5 years older than Van Gogh and much more knowledgeable, almost bribed Gauguin to go to Arles to spend time with Van Gogh. Gauguin made the trip in October. When these two started painting together, Gauguin gave Van Gogh the final piece of the puzzle as he advised Van Gogh to paint from memory and imagination. The importance of this is obvious if we compare Van Gogh's paintings of sunflowers before and after. Let me put up one by him done in Paris. It was painted from August to September in 1887. It is definitely a nice painting, good enough to catch Van Gogh's eyes, but it's painted from reality. Now let's look at this one. He painted this one after arriving at Arles. We can see the impact of Gauguin's advice. Let's look at some irises. Do you see the difference? He was increasingly painting more with the ideas in his head than the objects before his eyes. Certainly he was thinking about Japanese ukiyo-e paintings. If you cannot see it, this one may be more obvious. It is called Almond Blossom. The Japanese were and still are crazy about cherry blossom that does not look much different from this. Pay attention to the flatness. He also experimented with other techniques. For instance, look at this yellow house. These two lines should not approach like this. In other words, these two lines should get closer here, because things become smaller when they are farther away. Because of the diverging lines, this surface looks twisted, doesn't it? If we look at this side of the yellow house, it is also twisted. I'm going to leave this to you to figure out why. Perspectives often got in the way of what Van Gogh wanted to do. I think that there was also the element of him not wanting to be bothered by the perspectives, which got in the way of him expressing himself. Here is another one. I probably don't need to point out the perspective problems in this picture, right? Do you see the similarities, this painting with Cézanne's still lifes? This is another painting, from memory. There were several things at play when Gauguin arrived at Arles on October 23rd. First, the two arrogant souls almost immediately tried to dominate each other. For Gauguin, he was clearly older and more accomplished. For Van Gogh, well, he was always Van Gogh. Second, Van Gogh did not want to go back to be the lone fighter. He wanted to organize an art colony. One thing that he probably did not realize was that an unhappy Gauguin would leave him inevitably. In any case, with all the bickering, before the crash, the two painted together. They even visited Musée Fabre in Montpellier together. A couple of days before Christmas, exactly 2 months, with Gauguin, the two had another fight, or the continuation of the same one. It ended up with Van Gogh cutting off a part of his ear, wrapping it up, and sending it to a certain 17-year-old prostitute. The next morning, Van Gogh was found unconscious and sent to hospital. I think that one of the triggers was Theo's engagement a couple of days earlier. Van Gogh took it as abandonment, plus the upcoming holidays and the obvious upcoming departure of Gauguin. After waking up in hospital, Van Gogh repeatedly asked for Gauguin, who had told the police to say that he had left for Paris. He left Arles later that day, never to see Van Gogh again. Like everyone else, as Gauguin wrote to his brother a decade earlier, I have need of relationships, of friendship or affection or trusting companionship, and am not like a street pump or lamppost, whether of stone or iron. Who does not have that need? For Van Gogh, after back and forth between the Yellow House and hospital, he stayed in hospital for 2 months before checking into a mental asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence voluntarily. He gave this portrait to his doctor, who did not like it, used it to clean chicken poop, and gave it away. It hangs today at the Pushkin Museum of Fine Arts in Moscow. At the Saint-Paul-de-Mossoul Asylum, he had 2 cells, with one used as his studio. He was unable to write, but he was able to paint. From my personal experience, painting has a calming effect, while excessive writing gets the blood pressure up. In the mental asylum, he did not get much chance to paint outside. He was forced to use more of his memory and the work of others. This was a period he painted the famous Starry Night, which we discussed in episode 3, season 1. In May 1890, Van Gogh moved to Auvers-sur-Oise, at the outskirts of Paris to be close to Theo. Cézanne also lived there while he was in Paris. Van Gogh was cared by the same Paul Gachet, the painter/physician who also took care of Cézanne. Van Gogh's impression of Gachet was that Gachet was sicker. On July 27, 1890, aged 37, according to L'Echo Pontacien, the local newspaper, Van Gogh was shot by a revolver in the field. After the shot, he returned to the house where he died 2 days later. The common belief was that Van Gogh shot himself. But if suicide was his intent, why didn't he simply take another shot when the first one failed? Also, the angle of the shot indicated that it was unlikely that Van Gogh had done it himself. On the other hand, deranged and confused, Van Gogh himself admitted to the police that he had shot himself. For an art series here, we're not going to go through all the evidence to reach an inconclusive conclusion. What we can say here is that Van Gogh died of infection caused by the bullet. Had there been a surgeon, the outcome may be different. Émile Bernard, Julien Tanguy, who exchanged paint for paintings, and Lucien Pissarro, son of the famous Impressionist, attended the funeral with Theo and Dr. Gachet, among some 20 others. Theo's health deteriorated after the death of Van Gogh. He was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in November and died in January 1891, some 6 months after Van Gogh. In 1914, Jo, Theo's widow, then remarried, exhumed Theo's body to be buried with his brother at Auvers-sur-Oise. The story of Van Gogh continues in the next episode. I'll see you then.